We already know that 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy's rise is things of legend, things you would see in a movie, and we already kind of believe we will see a Brock Purdy movie one day, especially if he wins the Super Bowl. But Jed York met with media, and we don't hear from Jed York very much anymore. And we know Jed York took a ton of heat for some of the comments that he was made and all the situation with the Harbaugh era and all that stuff. And so he's been kind of quiet ever since. And just he's really let the guys do what they need to do, and he's been a great owner. And we heard from him today, and he gave an incredible story, incredible insight into when Kyle Shanahan knew Brock Purdy was the guy. And it was his rookie season after training camp when he said he knew that Brock was absolutely a guy that could take over this starting job. And that's when they had Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance on the roster. I mean, absolutely phenomenal story by Jed York. Take a listen to what he had to say right here.
I said his honesty, his directness. I mean, we haven't really talked much about Brock, but I mean that's a good example of Kyle's directness. Last year in preseason, I think week 1 of training camp, which you have a quarterback that we're paying, I think, $20 million to. You have a guy that you drafted with investing 3 first-round picks into, and he grabs me after practice. He's like, hey man, we got to talk. And that's generally not a good thing when your coach tells you got to talk. Like, all right, what's up? And he's like, I think our third-string quarterback's our best quarterback. I'm like, okay. I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, obviously, like, we've invested in Trey. Like, Trey's doing a good job. Like, we're going to do everything that we can. We're not going to change that. And we're not going to change the depth chart. But, like, I think Brock will end up being our quarterback at some point. And, like, he didn't force it, right? You had 2 injuries, and that's how Brock ended up playing. But he's always honest, even if it's not, like, one thing that owners don't love to hear when they've invested money and or draft picks or both into people, that the last pick in the draft is the guy that we think is the best. That's generally not great news, but he's honest, and he let it play out the right way. Brock, ironically, I think his first game was against the Chiefs, and he had some mop-up time, and Brock, I think he threw 1 ball into the stands, and I may or may not have had some sarcastic comments for Kyle post-game. But when Brock took over last year, like, I think we had a calm about us, but there was a sense that, like, nothing catches you by surprise. And again, like, you might not love everything that Kyle tells you, but he's always open and honest, especially in the moment. And he's very clear about that with me. It's like, look, I will tell you exactly what I think of a player, a situation, a coach in the moment, but that might not be how I feel 3 weeks from now. So don't hold me to, this is what I said about somebody in training camp when we're in week 6 of the season. Like, ask me in the moment what you want to ask about whoever, and I'll give you my open and honest opinion. And again, you might not always love what he says, but I've been around enough people in this league to know that you don't always get a straight comment from people in those positions, and Kyle will always shoot you straight.
From that point, one of the all-time great coaches. If you guys lose, he'll be can't win the big one. Perception based on how this game turns out. How will your perception of him change?
I love Kyle.
One way or the other?
I think Kyle, it would be hard for me to say that I enjoy working with anybody more than I enjoy working with Kyle. I think Kyle's a phenomenal coach. I think he's done a phenomenal job with our club. I mean, I don't really care what the outside perception is. It is very, very difficult to make the playoffs. It's very difficult to get to a championship game. It's very difficult to win a championship game. It's more difficult to get to this game. And I think Kyle's results more than speak for themselves.
Shout out to 95.7 The Game for the video. I mean, what an incredible story that is. And again, it all was sparked because Jed is talking about how direct Kyle is and how he doesn't sugarcoat anything and how he's going to tell you exactly how he feels, exactly what he sees. And And Jed York clearly appreciates that about him. And the fact that he talks about how Kyle pulls him to the side and says, you know what? I know we may have traded multiple first round draft picks and are paying Trey Lance a pretty decent amount of money. And we also have Jimmy Garoppolo still here, who's also getting paid handsomely. I think that guy that we took at 262, yeah, I think he's our best quarterback on the roster right now. That's bold, man. That is bold, but it also speaks to the relationship that I think Jed York and Kyle have. I mean, that's crazy. Like, if you really think about it, right? Because when it was appearing that it like wasn't working out with Trey Lance, one of the things that we kept hearing is, "Oh, these guys are going to be on the hot seat. You can't take a quarterback that high, let alone trade what they traded to go up and get that quarterback and miss and save your job." How many times did we hear that? So again, I think that is such a cool element of this is that he was able to one miss on Trey Lance and two really just luck out. No, it's what it feels like. You get Brock Purdy in the last pick. It feels like luck a little bit to come in and be better than both Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. And this is after his rookie training camp. And then we see what he did when he entered the game against the Dolphins. He literally didn't lose until he got knocked out of the NFC Championship game against the Eagles. So, I mean, what an incredible story. I mean, we already knew this Brock Purdy situation was thing of legends, but man, the fact that Kyle called it early on, and we had heard that Jed York had said that Kyle had told him that Brock was pretty good. He never said that he thought that Brock was better than both Jimmy and Trey as a rookie. That's pretty crazy, if you really think about it. So man, but again, what incredible insight by Jed York. And again, just quickly on Jed, I think Jed has done a phenomenal job. I've given him his flowers before. He's taken a lot of heat by the fan base, obviously, with the Jim Harbaugh situation and how that ended, and the Trent Baalke to then, Tom Sula to Chip Kelly and the dark days of being, the 49ers before Kyle Shanahan came around. But man, you got to give him tons of credit for hiring Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. John Lynch, a completely unproven general manager coming out of the booth, and what these guys have done in transforming the San Francisco 49ers back into one of the top sports franchises in all of sports. And again, like, yes, we're in the Super Bowl. They haven't won a Super Bowl yet, but 3 NFC championship games in the last 4 seasons, or what is it? 4 NFC championship games in the last 5 seasons. That's impressive. And just like Jed says, it's hard to do. So Jed gives Kyle Shanahan his backing again. So I love it, man. I love everything about this. This was phenomenal insight from Jed. Jed, we want to hear from you a little bit more. You went into hiding for a while, and for good reason, because the 49er fans were at your neck. But man, I'd love to hear from Jed more. Great insight. Great insight by Jed. And man, just grows the legend of Brock Purdy even more. What did you guys think about what Jed York had to say? All the stuff about Brock and Kyle, let me know in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.